Aaron Rodgers is targeting a return in mid-December, just 3 months after his Achilles surgery. And based on what he said he's currently doing, I cannot wrap my head around this. Welcome back, everybody. I'm Dr. Brian Sutterer. My goal on this channel is to help teach you about the medical side of the sports world. We all know an Achilles injury is typically a 9 to 12 month recovery. Yes, we've had the outliers like the Cam Akers of the world, but in general, this is thought to be 9 to 12 months. We've gotten these hints that Rodgers is talking about coming back later this season, but this is what we heard on tonight's broadcast. Let's take a listen.
Last few weeks, Aaron Rodgers has been on the field throwing footballs pregame. Tonight, he stayed in the locker room instead, and I talked to him when he came out. He said he just wasn't feeling it. He told me he has been working on a weight-limiting treadmill, jogging at 50% of his body weight.
Okay, let's talk about that first. Currently, he's working on a weight-limiting treadmill, and they said jogging at 50% of his body weight. Obviously, what we're talking about here, his goal is mid-December. So that's just 4 weeks, 5 weeks out. So he has to be able to get from jogging at only 50% of his body weight to playing NFL level football in 4 weeks. This is something like what they're talking about here with this body weight reduced treadmill. So this is something that's called an Alter G. It's a specific type of treadmill that reduces the amount of body weight that your lower body experiences when you're running. It's extremely helpful. It's a great tool to help with athletes and individuals recovering from lower body injuries, stress injuries, etc., because it allows you to still run and get that movement back, but allows you to put reduced weight through your joints. How it basically works is you go into this inner thing, it sort of seals up around your hips, and then this part, the pressure gets changed inside this lower compartment to basically give you some buoyancy, to kind of lift you up off the treadmill, and you can set it to different percentages of your body weight. So you can run, I think on some of these, even as low as like 10% of your body weight, to where you're basically just moving your legs to reproduce the motions, then you can gradually ramp higher and higher to closer to your actual body weight. Of course, for Rodgers, recovery from an Achilles rupture, the more weight he puts through that tendon that's still very much in the early stages of healing, the more it's going to stress that injury. And so what he's trying to do here is limit the weight through the tendon to allow him to get those muscles running, to get that motion back, but not put so much stress through it. Very common, very normal, non-dolphin noise part of rehab.
His goal this week, to increase to 75%. He said he can drop.
So then presumably 75% next week, maybe you get to 100% by Thanksgiving or the end of November. That still doesn't put you at having any more than like 2 weeks to then be running at 100% on a field to get back to the NFL by mid-December. But let's keep listening.
Back, he can cross over. He just has to be able to get up on his toe.
Now, this is a big thing here. I don't know if this means he currently can't raise up on his toes or if he's just struggling to raise up on his toes. The Achilles tendon in the back of the calf is part of this gastroc tricepsurae complex. Achilles tendon shown right here highlighted, coming off of the gastrocnemius, the medial to lateral head, and then the underlying soleus. The function of this whole complex is to plantar flex, basically push down, raise your heel up off the ground. And so after you go through a surgery where you're repairing and stitching this tendon back together, for a period of time while that tendon is healing, you don't want to stretch it and pull it because number one, that could tear the surgical repair or could cause it to get stretched just enough to where it heals in a lengthened position. And so it would not be surprising at all if Rodgers is not doing a lot of calf raises right now because that's still going to put a lot of stress just now 2 months after his surgery. So you think about all this together and the amount of stuff that he has to accomplish between now and potentially 5 weeks to hit that goal just seems like an absolutely not safe progression of what's generally considered acceptable and safe to get back to your sport.
Has to get his heel off the ground to start running. His goal.
So he's not even running yet. Again, he has to get back on the field. We're 5 weeks out from this goal. This just all seems very, very implausible.
To come back mid-December. He said, I know it sounds insane, but you do a good surgery, you have a good patient, it makes this possible.
Let's just talk about this. So yes, what he says with having a good surgery is point number one. You have to have a successful surgery that did a really good job of approximating the two ends of the ruptured tendon as your foundational basis. The surgeon who operated on him, arguably one of the best, most experienced, who's done these in a lot of high-level athletes. So as far as we know, we can check that box. The next part of this, what he says about having a good patient, Rodgers admittedly said he was basically throwing the protocols out the window because there's not a protocol to get back to football in 3 months. And so I don't know how you can say you're really following a specific protocol when you're pushing things so much faster than the norm. But let's take all of that, sort of that opinion piece, you might interpret it, out of the picture and just talk about the biological healing of what's going on here. Whenever we have any sort of a tendon or a ligament injury in the body, let's take, for example, the ACL or the Achilles here, whenever it completely ruptures and tears, that ligament or tendon is made of collagen fibers. Those collagen fibers, you can think of them like ropes. There's different types of collagen, depending on how woven and sort of structured those collagen fibers are, gives the tendon or ligament its strength, including the composition of the collagen. On a biologic level, whenever tendons and ligaments are trying to heal and regenerate and recover after a tear, your tendons go through this timed process. And there's little things you can do to try and help facilitate some of that, but it's not like you can necessarily speed up to this extent that biologic healing. Yes, you can work on getting your strength in the muscle back. Yes, you can get your range of motion back. You can do more specific activities that we observe, but when you were to look at the actual microscopic structure of that Achilles tendon, there's only so much you can do to speed up just Mother Nature in terms of getting those tendon fibers to realign, to heal, to grow back into their nice normal position. That process doesn't just happen overnight magically. It goes through this very complex phase where there's initially a lot of just repair, where rough collagen just kind of gets thrown in, things scar back across. And then the more chronic phase is this remodeling phase that can take well into a year, where those tendon fibers, those collagen fibers are remodeling, they're realigning, they're working slowly to get back as close as possible to that original tendon strength. When we talk about fixing these tendons, there's generally two approaches. There's a repair or a reconstruction. A reconstruction is when you take a completely new ligament or tissue from somewhere else in the body or a cadaver and you reconstruct the ligament. That's like the ACL, for example. We do ACL reconstructions. Historically, people thought it would be a great idea to just repair it, just sew it back together. Turns out it didn't work as well as we thought, so now you actually reconstruct it. The healing time is more of that graft integrating into the bones where you've put it into the knee. In the case of an Achilles, you're not reconstructing it. You're just taking the two existing torn ends, you're approximating them together, and you're throwing a bunch of stitches through it to try and get it to hold and then allow natural biology to regrow and refuse those tendon fibers together. And that process takes time. Now, the key part here that I feel like is getting missed in all this discussion is there's a big difference between simply returning to play and returning to play successfully. Because do I doubt that Rodgers is going to get back out there on the field in the middle of December? No, I don't doubt it at all. I think he's going to. I think he will feel like he's at a good enough spot with his rehab that he will suit up, he will start, he will try and play. And the media will interpret that as he's had a successful surgery, he's had a successful recovery, and think that now the standard is going to be 3 months instead of the typical 9 to 12. But that doesn't mean that there's something that's been compromised in that whole process. Certainly the tendon is not completely healed at that stage. By 3 months, the tendon is not completely healed. There's no way around that. And if you're pushing your rehab a little bit, you're doing more aggressive walking, you're doing more aggressive strengthening to get back that function, you pull on that surgical repair site and you can make the tendon heal in a stretched position. Muscle tendon units are very specifically designed with this length and sort of strength relationship, meaning how stretched or tight the muscle and tendon is plays a role in how much force it can generate. So if you take a normal tendon and then you repair it, but it's now a centimeter longer than it was before, you lose a lot of that ability of the muscle to generate strength and power to deliver onto the ankle. Now, in somebody like Rodgers, who is not a mobile quarterback, they're not a running back, they're probably not going to notice that much of a difference by just standing in the pocket and throwing. So that's why Rodgers is probably able to say he can compromise a little bit of that final return to play because he's not trying to push off. He's not trying to sprint. He's not going to be a mobile running quarterback when he comes back like he isn't right now. But there's all those other little factors there that, yes, I'm all for people pushing what's considered the standard and the norm, but not at the expense of forgetting about just true biologic healing and what's potentially being sacrificed in the recovery. Like I said, there's no doubt in my mind he's going to come back. I think the fact that he's at the age he is, he's the position he is, the type of player he is, he can probably tolerate a little bit of that impaired function that you might get if you push your rehab along. But there still is going to be the risk that this thing ruptures. And then if it ruptures, you have to repair it again, and then you're potentially out for the start of next season. And so those factors are still going to be there. And I think we just have to be very careful with what we consider to be a successful, appropriate recovery and return to play time for a return to play time that is very acknowledging and accepting of some underlying risks and not trying to apply that specific scenario to everybody. Rodgers is a grown adult. He can decide for himself. If he understands these risks and wants to take those risks and is okay with maybe having a little bit of a 5-10% strength deficit because of some elongated healing, sure, let him. If the team's okay with it, let him do it. But we have to be careful about translating that to mean that now every Achilles tendon injury should heal in 3 months to where you can go back and are considered fully healthy. You can't rush natural biology to that extent. You can functionally get out there, you can walk, you can throw a football, but when you truly look at what's going on with the tendon, it's just simply not healed at 3 months. And there's no way around that, and I hope that that doesn't get ignored and lost in this whole conversation. That's it for the video, everybody. Let me know, as always, any questions or comments down below. And until next time, we'll see you later. Bye.